In his remarks earlier, President Obama once again emphasized the U.S. fight against ISIS.
And we're joined now in Atlanta by former U.S. Ambassador to Iraq, Christopher Hill. Ambassador Hill, I want to ask you, during your time as Ambassador of Iraq, there was a big focus on foreign fighters, the path they were taking into Iraq to fight the war. Now it's all about online recruitment. How does this change the war on terror?
Well, there's no question there has been a lot of online recruitment that ISIS has really made this a priority. Upwards of some 40,000 recruits coming from outside of the sort of core theater of Iraq and Syria. That said, there's been a lot of progress in trying to choke this off, and particularly a lot of progress on the financing. So we know that these fighters, once they get there, are not being paid very much. And so the consequence is that ISIS has been kind of reeling on the battlefield, so much so that I think the dream of a caliphate is slipping away. But clearly what we're seeing is some effort to take credit for domestic terrorism incidents of the kind that we've seen in Orlando.
Ambassador Hill, the president, you just heard him speaking moments ago, saying that the United States has taken out some 120 top ISIS commanders in the battlefield, but that if we impugn an entire religion or imply that we are at war with an entire religion, we're doing the work for them. Do you agree with the president's assessment?
Oh, I think the president has a definite point. If you just talk about Islamic radicals, I mean, you're basically talking about, billions of people who would call themselves Islamic. So if you really want to get specific, you could talk about Sunni Wahhabis from Saudi Arabia, but then there are a lot of Wahhabis who would be offended by that. So, I mean, this kind of naming game is not an easy thing. I think what's important is to really go after ISIS on the battlefield, and with something on the order of coming up to some 3,000 sorties. I mean, we're running helicopter ops against these people on the road to Mosul in Iraq. I mean, these are pretty intense airstrikes. And as your metric, or as the president's metric suggests, we're having a lot of impact on the leadership of ISIS. So the war is going well in Iraq and Syria. The question is the extent to which there will be efforts by ISIS to turn to sort of something that's very familiar to us, and that is terrorist attacks against us and other places like Europe.
And we know that FBI Director James Comey has said he doesn't think agents could have done anything differently during their previous investigations of Mateen. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, my experience with the FBI, my experience with these law enforcement agencies that work against these terrorist attacks is that they're pretty good, and we can be pretty proud of them. I mean, compared to any other country in the world, I think we have really the best. Now, are they able to stop these things? Are they able to make really guesstimates of whether people should remain as suspects? I think it's a very tough business, and I'm not sure I'm comfortable with the idea of sort of blaming our anti-terrorist elements right now. I think it's really a time for us to kind of come together and go after these people, and I think we've done a pretty impressive job on the ground where ISIS has thrived in the past, namely in Syria and Iraq.
Ambassador, as a diplomat, I want to get your take on Donald Trump's repeated call to temporarily ban Muslim immigrants. Is it your estimation that that kind of sort of anti-Muslim rhetoric inflames the situation? I mean, what are they saying about us, about this possibility should Donald Trump become president of the United States in the Middle East? And I'm not trying to suggest that what people think in those countries will dictate our policy, but I just want to get a sense of how this is being perceived by the rest of the world.
Yeah, I don't know what he's talking about, neither does he. I mean, the people that we work with against ISIS are by and large Muslims. If you look at the Jordanian government, if you look at the Iraqi government, we have a coalition around the world, some 60 nations, many of which are Muslim majority nations, Malaysia, et cetera. So his notion that he can malign all Muslim people is frankly ridiculous, which is about as far as I can go on Family Time TV. But really, he absolutely doesn't know what he's talking about. And this is what is so horrific about this candidate for president.
Okay, Ambassador Christopher Hill, thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you. Pleasure.